Rabbi, how are you? Welcome to our show. Welcome. So happy to have you, specifically in this time, in the holidays. I want to talk about your book. This class is also sponsored in the success of David Pack, for his success in his every aspect of his life. May God bless him and give him success in every aspect of his life. Also, Le'u Nishma Yerachmiel Daniel Ben Gedale. So, Rabbi, most of our classes are based a lot of Rabbi Nachman's teachings. So we wanted to get a little bit of a different perspective today on the holidays. We know you wrote a book on the holidays, 60 Days to, what's the name of your book, Rabbi?
60 Days, a Spiritual Guide to the High Holidays. Yeah.
Beautiful. So we wanted you to talk a little bit about that and pretty much give a lot of people are from different backgrounds, and just to get pretty much a guideline or what we can concentrate on, what we can meditate on these 60 days. Obviously, Elul's already passing. I myself have taught many classes from the Baal Shem Tov, but let's get some practicality and see what else from a different perspective, maybe not a Breslov perspective, but maybe a perspective also for myself on Chabad, Hasidus, and anything.
Well, sure. So first of all, Gedale, thank you for having me. It's a real honor to be here. I also want to thank David Pack, who introduced us. I also want to mention, he said to me that he told me about an upcoming wedding. So that's also dedicated in honor of the upcoming wedding of Eitan Ruvain Ben Kila and Naomi Sarah from the Pack family.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Zato.
Great. So again, great to be here. And listen, this is the most momentous time of the year, the high holiday season, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. Being someone that's been around many years, and I grew up in the system, I grew up in an observant home, but I recognized as well that literally thousands, if not millions of Jews who want to find some inspiration during this high holiday season, you sometimes go to synagogue or you go to some service and you leave left wanting, meaning everyone's looking for inspiration but can't always find it. You know, the prayers are quite long. They're not always personalized. And even if our souls are awake, it's sometimes quite challenging. So I've done some Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur services with what we call the unaffiliated. And I learned the most from them because they didn't take it for granted. They didn't just read the words like what we call lip service, like many of us do. And they wanted to have a personal experience. So for me, the challenge was a very straightforward one. How do you experience Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and the whole holidays into a transformative experience, a personally, psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually uplifting and empowering service that really gives you the opportunity to deal with your challenges, to open up new channels of blessings, new channels of opportunities and possibilities. Now, you mentioned Breslov, you mentioned Chabad, you mentioned the Baal Shem Tov. I want to say this. I find that ultimately, even if there are different languages, I mean, all are trying to do the same thing, which is really to bring the soul, the neshama, the soul into the experience. And I think that is the great challenge, because it's very easy to gravitate toward a we'll call it a mechanical Judaism or a robotic one. And it takes more work to get into the soul of it. So briefly, serving this need, I felt it valuable to create a book called 60 Days. It's essentially a journal that goes day by day from the beginning of Elul, the month that prepares us for the new year, all the way through the month of Tishrei, including all the holidays, and try to personalize it, to make the experience a personal one. We talk about Rosh Hashanah. Why is it such an important day? What is Rosh Hashanah? You know, we know it's the beginning of the year. Some people call it the Day of Judgment. We sound the shofar. And just to use an example, Rosh Hashanah is also the birthday of the human race. That's when Adam and Eve were created, as the Bible tells us. So it's really the collective birthday of each of us as an individual. So the way I would pose the question would be, okay, this is your birthday, your collective birthday. Why are you here? Rosh Hashanah is a day when we should ask ourselves, why are we here? What's our mission statement in life? And when you put it in those words, it takes on a whole different challenge. The truth is, it's not New Age Judaism. It's what was always there, but sometimes it got lost in translation because we don't know the Hebrew. Many of us don't know all the traditions. So it's important to very much to personalize it. So I would just begin with that as a premise, and we can talk more about it. But that's the gist of my book, is to try to personalize the high holidays in a very intimate way, where you can really feel, oh, wow, this talks to me, my issues. People are struggling. People are struggling with psychological stuff, personal relationships. That's the gist of it.
I know Rabbi Nachman's, a lot of Rabbi Nachman's messages is that he instructs, just like, we learned 30 days before the laws of the holiday. He's asked us constantly in his books, to yearn 30 days before the holiday, just to be able to get the taste of the light of the holiday. And it's something that the preparation is just as important as actually showing up. And showing up is pretty much what you get based on the preparation.
Well said. Absolutely. Like you go to a meeting. If you want a job interview, if you just come in and try to wing it, it's, the more you prepare, the better the results. Yeah.
Rabbi, let's talk a little about Rosh Hashanah. We've spoken about Rabbi Nachman's, as far as the concept of surrendering to coronation of the king, surrendering to a place where everything is good. Talk a little bit about that, the concept of where this is not a day where we're really asking for forgiveness. We're really, sort of going into bittul, going into real surrender, where everything is.
Sure, absolutely. I as a writer, I'm somewhat of a wordsmith, so I'm always looking at words. The word surrender, many people terrifies them, because surrender sounds like you're fighting a war and then you surrender to the enemy. So I think it's important to explain what the word means. Sure. You use the word bittul, which is the real original word in Hebrew. And bittul also, if you translate it literally in Hebrew, people think bittul means annihilation, obliteration. But it's really one of the most powerful concepts in life, the idea that you suspend yourself and your ego and your self-interest to something greater than yourself. So that's when you see it that way, then you're not surrendering to some adversary or surrendering to another party. What you're doing is opening yourself up to experience something greater than yourself. It's not about me. So when you say Rosh Hashanah, the coronation of the king, we use the words. It's really the commitment that you were put here for a purpose, and you want to have a relationship with God. You want to have a relationship with something that's eternal, immortal, and far beyond us. And opening ourselves up to that is the key to the whole Rosh Hashanah. I mean, I put it earlier in different words. I said, we say every morning, for instance, in the prayer, Moda ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam shechzarta bi nishmati b'chama rabba munasach. Simply put, thank you for returning my soul to me. The idea of gratitude, the idea of knowing you're not self-made man or woman. You are put here and you have a mission in life. It's really commitment. I like the word commitment, but surrender is an accurate word. It's all really the same idea. The idea that it's not about me, it's about opening yourself. It's like if a person's going to listen to their teacher, they need to be, in the words of the Talmud, they need to create a receptacle. You have to be receptive. A full cup can't be filled. So you have to have that type of emptiness, and really it's like suspend your wisdom, suspend your sophistication, just stand like a simple child before God and receive. And it's like absorbing. And when you do, you then become an extension of something greater than you can ever be on your own. That's how I would phrase it.
I think that's exactly. I mean, that's pretty much commitment is a great word also, because again, the opposite is obviously controlling the process or fighting the process or really, not accepting, even the year that you had before. So really, how do you go into the new year with sadness and anger and say, okay, please give me a better year this year, where the whole concept is like ending strong and elul and really coming up to recognize, okay, I'm ready to make, like the Baal Shem Tov says, Havdalah, really to separate the person from the act and come in as a better me instead of worrying just going to have a better year, more of a trusting person, more open to receive. And I actually love the concept of surrender, because you're no longer, you did what you have to do, that you can walk away and it almost gives me personal peace instead of always trying to control everything. And I see everybody fighting everything today. And I've lost my son last year, and we just did a Torah dedication for him. And I know what that process is. going through, losing a 15-year-old son, and just going through that process of what are you going to do, fight with God? We just have to believe everything's for the best, and we have to surrender to the ultimate purpose that there's, hit a certain time in this world. And I've also being in the recovery business, I have recovery centers. Nothing happens in life until the person surrenders and says, okay, I'm ready to start. So I see this in my own eyes and it's amazing how God gives us Rosh Hashanah as that day to really, really, you're finally letting the light in. And people are so afraid of that, which is such an unbelievable opportunity. But if we don't understand the words, if we're just reading from a book, if it's not explained in a psychological sense, then I could see where, we look lost. We're like the leaders, and we're at the end of the day, we've lost faith in ourselves.
It needs to be explained. There's what you're saying is reminiscent. The Arizal, the Isaac Luria, the great mystic, writes something beautifully. I mean, he didn't write it, his students wrote it, but he says that right before Rosh Hashanah, the whole world goes into a comatose state, like a spiritual slumber, exactly like you said. It surrenders and in a sense suspends and strips itself from its previous consciousness to open it up to a new consciousness. Wow. And it's the rule of life. If you go in with your thoughts of yesterday and your words of yesterday and your actions of yesterday, you'll be a product of yesterday. If you want something new, you need to strip yourself, or as you put it, surrender. You need to be able to suspend and surrender yourself to something greater. I find that to be unbelievable. It's like a seed has to rot in the ground before it blossoms into a beautiful tree. And everything in life is what we need, bittul. The Kabbalists also call it like the yesh, the ayin, and the yesh, that you're in a state of being, and you need to go into a state of suspension, or almost a vacuum, a void, before you get into the new state of being. It's a metamorphosis, and it's put beautifully. I just want to say, I totally agree with you about the word surrender. I just feel sometimes you have to qualify it so people shouldn't misunderstand what it means. It's not like you're not giving up on your life. You're actually opening yourself up. You're letting go. I remember someone, and I want to say my heart goes out to you about your son. I was not aware, so really sad to hear. But I hope God blesses you to make you a stronger person. And
He has blessed me. He has.
Yeah. So I remember someone who had lost a 19-year-old boy. He was in South Africa. He was the head of actually Nissan Motors in South Africa, an Afrikaans, not a Jewish guy. And he had met me, and he told me he read I have another book called Toward a Meaning for Life. And he said to me these words. He said, I lost my 19-year-old son to an aneurysm. He was a golden soul. He was a golden, beautiful child. And he said, I literally lost my whole life fell apart. And he said, someone gave me a copy of your book. And these are the words he said to me. I learned from your book to give my pain to God and get strength in return. I surrendered because he was a man of control. He was a chief executive, ran a big company. And you're absolutely right. When you think you control it all, it becomes quite difficult to open yourself up, to be vulnerable. And Rosh Hashanah is a perfect time. It's like I said before, it's a birthing. It's a birthing of a new world and a birthing of a new person. Yeah.
And it's so sad that, you'll see the majority of people, let's say they'll have that first time they go to synagogue or the second time they'll go. And all they're doing is bidding for aliyahs. And it's just, they get the wrong, it's like they came to they came to the worst day, the best day, but at the end of the day, they get the worst experience. And I'm in such pain by seeing so many people. Baruch Hashem, thank God, we've had a lot. We've had tremendous success with my podcast and just getting people back and changing their relationships. Because if you have that if you have that behavior, you have that identity with your Creator that He's out to get you, or he's stingy, you're not so motivated. Not so motivated to surrender or to check in. Opposite, you're almost running away.
Absolutely. I just met a group of young men and women who very alienated, and that was the thing they said. They say they don't relate to the high holidays. They don't relate to all this fear, punishment, and then it becomes exactly as you said, bureaucratic and corporate. It's all about the soul. And I tried to say to them, it's a time to build a relationship with God. It's not about selling aliyahs, and it's not about trembling. It's about celebrating a relationship, a partnership, a marriage.
Spirituality. And it's funny, you don't want to trust in God. Who are you going to trust in man? Is there anybody you could look what happened the past couple of years? We don't. Nothing is real. Nothing. Nudes is not real. Nothing is real. So this
But
is where
you got
we're forced.
Yeah, but Gedale, you have to remember, a lot of people, for them, God is a very different God. Their God was one of punishment and anger and guilt. Like Levi Yitzchok Barditchever once told a self-proclaimed atheist, he said, "The God you don't believe in, I don't believe in either." So sometimes you have to retranslate the word God for people. Many people see God as this angry man in heaven on a throne, ready to strike us with lightning when we misbehave.
Right.
So sometimes we need to revisit and redefine, reclaim the true
Right.
God. You know,
because it's funny how we, one of the things I do work on a lot is consciousness. And it's definitely, even if you look at the books of psychology, specifically David Hawkins, he talks a lot about consciousness, and your relationship with your creator changes as your relationship with consciousness. That means the more you become trustworthy and the more you grow in consciousness, the greater your relationship is with your creator. It actually changes.
absolutely. Look, we all have the status quo, you could say, the natural state of ego consciousness. It's about me, and my needs, survival of the fittest, as they put it. And it's all about my pleasure or my avoiding pain. And the idea that you're here not just to serve yourself, but there's something greater, that you have a purpose, you were put here to serve, to illuminate, to give, not just to take, is for many, that itself is a revelation, an epiphany. But you're 100% right. When you open that up, all the possibilities open up.
You would obviously, how would you start pretty much with a person who's not affiliated? You would start by him changing his relationship with the creator first, obviously. What would you, how do you deal with I know how I deal with mine, obviously, but how do you deal practically today and how to get people, re-engaged and, recommitted? Well,
firstly, you have to know that every individual is a story of their own. There's no textbook, one size fits all. I use in my own heart and soul the word trust. You try to create a relationship with another person. If you become judgmental or condescending, or you're going to preach to them, that's not the way. Like, I don't know who coined this expression, but I love it. They say, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So to me, it's about care. When I speak to many unaffiliated people who are some born unaffiliated and some became unaffiliated, I always find it's about my communication with them. Do they feel that they can speak with me? Because if they look at me, they see a beard, a yarmulke. Oh, okay, you're going to now preach to me. I got to go to synagogue on Rosh Hashanah. And I remind them many times of the stereotypical rabbis or teachers they had. I mean, I deal with this all the time. And they say, oh, and they think I'm like, they're expecting me to criticize them or to judge. So the first thing is to establish a rapport. If you can't have an open conversation, and they see, oh, you're like a human being like me. You struggle like I struggle. You cry like I cry. You laugh like I laugh. So to me, it's about first creating a human connection. And then you can start talking about things. If you don't have that, almost the rest, maybe you can convince someone to go to Rosh Hashanah synagogue, but it's pulling teeth. And I find it has to be loving, trustworthy, and it's really all about that type of connection. That's, to me, the key to everything.
I believe you and your brother have really made that a tremendous impact on really changing the psychology of the way people approach things and everything. Y.Y. Jacobson is your brother, right?
Yes, my younger brother is my baby brother. Yeah,
you and your brother have really have just changed the whole. It's just the language you guys use and the warmth, and obviously you've also were connected to Lubavitcher Rabbi, I'm sure, as he was.
Yeah. Listen, I grew up. Even though I grew up in Crown Heights, I grew up in the Chabad community, but just to point out, my father was a journalist. So I also grew up in a very non-dogmatic, a very open-minded home. So even though I grew up in the Chabad environment, but I'm not a card-carrying member as in Chabad versus something else. I'm a universalist in the sense where I believe that God created each one of us. Yes, Chabad philosophy, I think, is very universal, very all-encompassing. So I would say I'm not part of corporate Chabad. I'm part of the Hashkafa Chabad, the perspective, which is very soulful and very much welcoming, and that each of us has something to contribute to the cosmic symphony of life.
Beautiful, beautiful. How important is it to go in there and basically, using Elul as a time of forgiveness for other people? Just because at the end of the day, if I am going to say, God is great, and then, I'm crowning the king, I have to really believe that. And I can't go in there, obviously, with all kinds of debt and worries and anxieties. If, that's why this Elul is such a powerful month, that we have such a power to clean up all that mess. And I guess that's why we're going through we have to do so much work so quickly in order to get there.
Well, I'll quote Rab Nachman, and also Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, from the founder of Chabad. They talk about tshuva tata and tshuva ilah, a lower level of tshuva, a higher level of tshuva. It's like when you want to bring a new furniture into your home, you first want to vacuum and clean out the dust. So you could have all the good resolutions. I want to start anew, and we're going to start a new beginning, a clean slate, but you have to clean up the dust as well, which means if you've hurt someone, you injured someone, make amends, ask for forgiveness, make decisions, resolutions. I'll be a better person. So there's the first level of tshuva, which is really cleaning up as much as you can your act, being accountable, introspection, soul searching. Then you prepare yourself really for the next level of tshuva, which is getting closer to the divine, to God, to transcendence, to tshuva from the word return. You're returning to the essence of who you really are. And you really need both. You can't just say, hey, you know what? I'll ignore my past transgressions and just jump into a future. It's a combination. You also don't want to be obsessed with your past. You don't want to just live in remorse and guilt. So you need to really balance the two. And I think Elul that's why, as you said before, the more you prepare, the better you enter. So as you prepare your mindset, your heart set, your soul set condition it to that type of approach of accountability, talked about surrender, commitment. Then when you come to Rosh Hashanah, you meet the king face to face. You are you've done your homework,
confidence,
and you're well prepared. Yeah.
You have confidence. It's funny how, I'm a little bit of a football fan, but there was a particular individual for the Dolphins that he was having a hard time with confidence. And somehow, he got a new coach, he got a new team, and somehow he had the game of his life yesterday, right? So he had the potential. It's not that he didn't have the potential to throw 500 yards. It's just back that he didn't believe in himself enough. And that's, how in the world is this guy today, yesterday throwing record numbers, and 2 years ago, he was almost out of the team. It's almost like we can go from such a low, but when we don't believe in ourselves, when we reject ourselves, the world rejects us. And that's such an important message, just to see that everything gets much better, that as long as we are taking that action. And I think Rob Pinson, he's also a very, very big follower of his. I think he says that the best word for tshuva was really recalibrating consciousness. Like in a higher consciousness, you don't judge people. In a higher consciousness, you're not sitting there and thinking of this petty control and petty fears, and you're mochem gadlut. You're in a godless mindset. So you expect that things are going to be good because you're going to interpret them as good. But when we walk around with these fears, these low self-esteem and all this, how could you just give me a handout? And this is where we haven't changed the consciousness, and we want better things. And that's the hardest thing that I see today.
It's beautifully said, and I totally agree. There's warfare, there's psychological warfare. You can have better weapons and better skills, but if you don't believe in yourself, as you just said, you're going to lose, because you need to also believe. Like you're a good coach. Really, what they do is help you believe in yourself. And so the thing, there are two things to say here. First of all, you have many more faculties and resources than you ever know.
Yes.
Because God would never give you a challenge you can't deal with. So you must know you have these resources. And then you have to have that confidence and act on it. Because I see so many people they have unbelievable strengths, and they're not aware of it. They're like, they think I'm nobody. I've been beat up in my life. I'm damaged goods. For me, it's too late. And I say, 1 second, the soul, it always remains intact. Whatever happened to you, happened to you. I use this line very often. I say, the circumstances of your life you may not control, but how you navigate them, you control completely.
Of course.
In other words, and you are never defined by your experiences. Trauma does not make you a trauma person. It means you happened, you experienced, you suffered. That doesn't make you a sufferer.
Right.
Don't be defined. What defines you is your neshama, is your soul, is the divine image in which you were created. And Rosh Hashanah is meant to reclaim that. That's that higher consciousness you're talking about. When you look from those eyes, then it's a very different world. When you look from the eyes from the bottom up, you deal with what you see, and we all know with our senses, we only see very little.
And at the end of the day, why are we reinventing the wheel? That's why the concept of bittul to a tzaddik, the concept of the Lubavitcher Rebbe and Reb Nachman, and these pillars already went through these ups and downs like me and you, and they've already set new paths. So the fact that we can rely on these rabbis to hold on to and obviously to give us the guidance. What are we reinviting? That's why I said myself, I'm going to copy the whoever's done this the best, and I'm just going to model it. And I felt that simplicity, and I realized that a lot of people have that. No, how do you know everything's true? How do you know? That's like the whole concept of the Jews in Egypt. They couldn't listen to Moshe because they had a kotzer ruach. But if you just listened to Moshe, it would have been, things could be so much easier if we just really, really nullified our will to recognize that these tzaddikim in our generation, whether it's Reb Nachman or the Baal Shem Tov or the Lubavitcher Rebbe, which both of those have tremendously impacted my life. What are we reinventing the wheel? Just go with simplicity.
Yeah, I think it's also important to qualify because some people may not understand fully the concept of Vayaminu b'Hashem u'b'Moshe Avdei, that they believed in God and his servant Moses. That we're talking about, we're not talking about suspending ourselves to just to a person. We're talking about people who have worked hard and refining themselves in a way they're godly people. So there's one God, and tzaddikim are here to serve as transparent channels to be role model and allow us to appreciate and get beyond our own egos. I just want to qualify for some people I know who may be listening. I know audiences I speak to, you have to qualify or else there's a misunderstanding of the concept. But of course I understand. And remember, these great giants themselves will tell you, yes, look to me for strength and hope and perspective, but you have to do your job as well. I'm not going to do the job for you. Everybody has their internal struggle, but it's a tremendous asset. Yeah, if I can share a story, the famous story they tell about the Blozhener Rebbe when he was unfortunately in the concentration camps in the Holocaust. So he had some of his Hasidim with him, some of his followers, and in this particular camp, the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, were all cruel, but this one was a particular cruel commandant, and he had this game they played where he had the Jews dig these wide trenches, and said. Then they started playing music, and whoever jumps over the trench survives. Who doesn't, they shoot on the spot. Anyway, in the mayhem, this one was shot. I mean, it was a big mess. One of the Chassidim says to the Rebbe, let's just give up on life. When this is ridiculous, being tortured like this. Let's allow our neshamas to go back to God, and we'll be at peace. The Rebbe said, no. As long as we have even one drop of strength, we have to fight. We don't know Hashem's plan, God's plan. Anyway, in the mayhem, nobody knew who survived, who didn't. Bottom line is they both survived. A few weeks later, the camps were liberated, and the Chassid meets his Rebbe. They both survived. And he said, Rebbe, how did you make it? You're an older man. How did you jump over the trench? And he said, I closed my eyes, and I held on to the kapota, to the coattails of my holy father, my holy grandfather, my holy great-grandfather, and that gave me the strength to jump. And he said to the chassid, and how did you do it? You're also not that young. He said, I held on to your coattails.
Wow.
So there's that, like we're midgets that stand on the shoulders of giants. And we'd have to hold on to those before us and greater than us. But that in turn, remember, the midget can also see farther, gives us the strength to forge ahead.
I mean,
beautiful story, no?
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, it's one of the lines that really, really, I think, changed my life was that where Reb Nachman speaks about that the more you know something, the more you recognize you know nothing. And just on that line itself is enough to say, you know what, maybe I'm not looking at this correctly. It allows me to change my perspective. And once you recognize myself in my own life, I constantly embarrassed over things that I thought about was good for me. And next thing you know, at the end of the day, or things that I didn't see the good in them. And at the end of the day, they ended up becoming such blessings in disguise. I have such embarrassment by the way I was thinking about before. So as life continues, you have to you have to give your creator the benefit of the doubt, to recognize that really these things at the end of the day are all free, beneficial, and you have to find a way to calm your emotions, and then we can have that confidence.
Absolutely. Yeah, listen, the perfect example is when someone asks you what the horizon looks like. If you're standing in a valley, there's one answer. You're standing on a plateau, it's another. You climb up 20 feet in the mountain, it's another. When you go up to the top of the mountain, it's a very different answer. So it really comes down to perspective. Everybody has their lens, their myopic vision and their prejudices. And the key is to open yourself up and know that what you knew yesterday, there's wider horizons if you allow yourself to accept it.
One of the things that I've seen in the self-help world, I'm sure you've also read a lot of books on self-help. I'm personally coming out with my own book, I Surrender, which is I'm working on, changing the language, getting it. But I don't see, because even myself, let's say, you are successful in an area of your life, and there comes to a point where you have 2 or 3 days without prayer, you're a different person, even though you have the intellect and you have the knowledge and you could, you know exactly what to do, but yet we fall all into such, emotional messes where we were completely blind. So that's one of the things I don't see enough in the self-help world, that hey, you still have to rely on your creator to open up your mind. He can close it and he can open it for you.
Well,
and
listen,
then need to pray, change yourself constantly.
Well, not to defend, but first of all, a lot of it is right. It's focused a lot more on your internal. But in the 12-step program, they do have the idea that the surrendering to a power that's greater than yours.
And the 11th step, constant prayer. Sure.
No, but I totally understand. I just want to share with you, you probably know this analogy from the Baal Shem Tov. Yeah. It's a beautiful analogy that really fits into this. He calls it, in Yiddish, there's a word called Schwindeltreppe. Schwindeltreppe means a spiral staircase. And why is it called Schwindel? Schwindel means swindle. Because the staircase fools you into thinking that you're not reaching your destination. When you climb a regular staircase, you go step by step by step, and maybe many steps, but you see your destination. In a spiral staircase, you keep making a 180-degree return, and you don't see, your back is to the destination, but as you go, you keep climbing. And right before you reach the apex, your goal, your destination, you turn your back completely to it, and you can think, no progress made, I didn't get anywhere. So Baal Shem Tov says in life, it's sometimes when you don't see, you've made all the progress, you just have to see it through. So sometimes when the total darkness, we talked before about the void, the vacuum, is the step right before the great revelation. And pain is sometimes like that. In the pain, you don't see your destination, you're blinded. But it could very well be that you've been climbing and climbing, and as a spiral staircase that really gives you the visualization of a constant journey. Right. However, it's not a straight line. Yeah.
It's funny how we, in my synagogue, where I have a Chabad Rabbi Silverman, unbelievable. And he says exactly that. We had a Shabbat, community Shabbat last week. And obviously right after COVID, there was a tremendous void. But he just had a community Shabbat that the place could not fit the people. So he said it exactly what it is. The light of the void that was created through COVID, the light that came back after that COVID is greater than the light was ever before. Yeah, there's just such a much more of a light of people wanting to